Good morning. It's good to have you all with us today. Right. Today's scripture text is Matthew 16 from verse 13. When Jesus, it's on page 983. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this wasn't revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he warned his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. Those of you who are chronologically challenged, like myself, the name Nicky Cruz you'll know very well. To others, I'll say that he was a feared New York gang member. He was hardened to the ways of the world. Inwardly, though, if anybody had really got to know him, he was a poor, lonely, frightened man. And he recounts one day seeking a church. He went to the church, and inside he could see a statue of Jesus. The gates to the church were barred. Jesus was locked inside. He was locked outside. And I'm ashamed to say that for much of history, the church has presented that front, that to outsiders, we're alien, we're strange, we do things differently. People are afraid to enter church, many churches. They don't know when to sit, when to stand, when to kneel. And so they don't venture inside the church. Now, this passage that we're looking at today, it follows shortly after Jesus and the disciples being in a storm on the Lake of Galilee. And Jesus was asleep in the boat. The disciples were frightened for their lives, so they wake Jesus up. "Master, Master, we're going to perish." And he rebuked the storm, and the waves quietened. So they turned to each other and said, "What manner of man is this?" During our storms of life, and we all have them, we tend, like those disciples, to panic. Now, something I recently discovered, and you may well know, is that the word panic comes from the Greek god, Pan. And Pan was known to shriek. And when he shrieked, believe me, it set everybody in a panic. And that's where the name came from. Now Jesus shows them what kind of man he is. His power over Pan and all the forces of darkness. And believe me, there are forces of darkness at work in our world. Gillian phoned me a few days ago to ask for prayer because a major figure, a medium, was being interviewed for our radio station, Lionheart Radio. There's a witchcraft shop in West Street. I was in a cafe in Annex yesterday, and there was a woman dressed all in black, and I saw a tattoo on her leg that was a frightful, devilish figure. And I could see a book that she had on the table beside her that was, it sounded from the title, something really occultish. Annick Market, there's regular witchcraft stall there. So we know that witchcraft and the powers of darkness are certainly very prevalent in our society. Now Jesus demonstrates his power against all the powers of the enemy. And when he challenged his disciples, who do you say I am? He didn't say in the quietness of a synagogue or something. He took them to one of the darkest places on this earth. He took them to Caesarea Philippi. Now, Caesarea Philippi, there's a rock, which I think we're going to see in a moment. That's the rock. Up to now, they've been unable to measure it accurately, but it's believed to be between 100 and 120 feet tall and 500 feet wide. At the base, you'll see a cave. Now, there were major earthquakes in the area, and so the full depths of the cave are no longer visible. But it was dedicated to Baal, the Canaanite god. And it lay, Caesarea Philippi, lies at the foot of Mount Hermon. Or to give it its full name, we find from Judges 3:3 that its full name is Mount Baal Hermon. Hermon means dedicated to. So Baal Hermon means dedicated to Baal. So the whole area was steeped in darkness. It was the epicenter of pagan worship. It has been associated, Caesarea Philippi, with Canaanite, Greek, and Roman worship, one culture placing their religion on top of another. In such a never-changing alien environment, we're forced, when we're brought face to face with the darkness, we're faced to examine our priorities and place our trust in the one unchanging reality. Greg Albrecht, the author, writes, "In a harsh, apparently unforgiving, and inhospitable environment, human beings are more likely to look for God and listen to him in what seems to be either a physical or spiritual place of death. We pay more attention to and place greater value on the eternal life God gives." Now, I said that the area had been dedicated to Baal, and Baal was a fertility god of the Canaanites. Amongst his titles was rider of the clouds. And so when we think of the Son of Man, to those educated in that era, they will know that the Son of Man, according to Daniel, comes riding on the clouds. So This is a demonstration of God's power over the one who claims to be rider of the clouds. To the people of the first century, the towering mountain behind the city was already the mountain of the high god. Even without a formal temple, Zeus, who was the next one to be worshipped there, was the exalted power associated with the peaks, while Pan was the earthly power associated with the cave. I'm talking about Pan. The Greeks replaced the Canaanite fertility god with their fertility god, Pan, who was traditionally depicted with an erect phallus, symbolizing raw, uncontrolled fertility. Now, Pan is thought to be half man, half goat. So to show how depraved this place is, there was a platform placed there, it is believed, where in order to encourage the god of fertility, basically people having sexual intercourse with goats, utter depravity. I mentioned the earthquake and the cave under the mountain. In the cavern, there was a pool of water, which is so deep and so still that it was thought to be the gateway to Hades. Hades was considered to be deep under the earth. Then the Romans, they built their own temple in front of this cave, and it was a temple to Caesar Augustus. Coins have been found bearing his picture, his emblem, and the words, Son of God, because Augustus, after his parents' death, was adopted by Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar had been deified by the Romans. They had decided that he was a god. So Caesar Augustus, as his adopted son, was the Son of God. And it served the purpose well, that he could claim such a thing. Peter, in his declaration, you are the Son of the living God. He's saying that in this place where there's worship of Caesar Augustus, he's saying, oh, okay, but Caesar Augustus is dead, Julius Caesar is dead, but you are the Son of the living God, the one who lives and will forever live. Praise his name. Right. So Jesus says, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Some people say, well, he's Elijah. And the people believed that change was imminent and that their deliverer would arrive to cast off the Roman shackles. And they believed that Elijah would come first. And just as Elijah had confronted the Baal worshippers at Mount Carmel, Jesus was confronting Pan Baal, and all the rest of these false gods up there. Malachi says, "See, I will send my prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day." Others said he was Jeremiah. Well, Jeremiah was known as the weeping prophet. Jesus was a man of sorrows. So that makes sense that some people thought he was Jeremiah. Others thought that he was John. John, when he came, he denounced the Jewish elite and called them a brood of vipers. And Jesus uses exactly the same terminology when he's speaking about the religious elite with who he called vipers. Okay, so who do you say that the Son of Man is? A current thought amongst the British people, 16 to 25-year-olds say, well, he was a good teacher on kindness, inclusion, justice. He was probably fictional. 25 to 40-year-olds say, oh, he was a good moral teacher, probably existed, but wasn't divine and is not relevant to me. That's a challenge to the church, that people outside say that he isn't relevant. We have to show the relevance of Christ to our society. 40 to 65-year-olds say he's an important historical figure who quite possibly existed and is a part of British cultural heritage. Jesus is often reframed as aligning with social justice, inclusivity, and helping the marginalized. Sometimes he's seen as a kind of proto-progressive figure whose teachings about love and compassion are emphasized, but teachings about judgment or exclusivity are downplayed. So Peter's declaration, "You are Christ, the Son of the living God," is a flag planted in enemy territory. Now, after the resurrection, Jesus showed his disciples his hands and his side, and then he said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you." They could see the wounds in his hands, his side. They could see something of the pain that he'd suffered. And Jesus, in effect, was saying, I am sending you in the same way, hurting into a hurting world. But what does this mean for us today? We live in a world of competing beliefs, political, religious, alternative truths. As Rob Pettifer stated a few weeks ago, whilst we may look weak and feeble, we come with great power and authority. We have the power to fight the spiritual forces of darkness that hold sway in this world, and we fight with the divine power to demolish strongholds that set themselves up against the knowledge of God. We must take the gospel out of our church buildings and onto the streets to challenge the injustices of our society with the good news of Jesus Christ. Before we challenge these spiritual forces, however, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at the strongholds that the enemy has in our lives. Unforgiveness, lust, envy, injustice, racism, addiction, as we surrender our whole beings, our whole selves to Christ, so we are empowered to take on the forces of darkness in this world. Psalm 51, verse 10, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. If anyone would like prayer, our prayer team will be on hand after the service. If we just take time to examine ourselves, ask where these injustices, these faults might exist in our own lives, and surrender to Christ. Thank you.